Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Weeks, and today we have a special guest upgrader. It's Arthur Meadowcroft.
Hey there, guys. How's it going out there?
We're excited to have you today. Today we are upgrading another one of the Outlaws of Thunder Junction Precons. We're talking about Desert Bloom today.
Yeah, Landfall.
Tell us a little bit about this deck.
Well, I was just thinking on my drive in today, this is the first Landfall deck they've done since AC back in Kaldheim.
Oh my gosh, it's been forever.
Yeah, I thought that was super exciting because I know a lot of LGSs like to promote like land decks as your first deck because so many lands, like you're rewarded for playing lands. Like that's really exciting. So
Yeah, and this is a specially focused one. It's around the land type deserts. It's Naya, it's red, it's green, it's white. It's about putting deserts into play and then putting them in their graveyard and back onto the battlefield.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about what comes in this box right off the shelf and what you're getting for your money. And then we're going to tell you 10 cards to add to it and 10 cards to take out to get this in peak fighting shape for your next game night. But before we get into it, of course, if you want to pick up any of the cards or the sealed product that we were talking about in this episode, go to cardkingdom.com/command. Card Kingdom has a huge selection of singles and sealed product. We're Commander players. We're picky about the kind of cards that go in our decks. I know when I was building my desert deck, I really wanted to focus around having all of the same printings of deserts in there so everything looked as cohesive as possible. And Card Kingdom has a huge selection of cards, so you can get a ton of the cards that you're looking for in one place. And you know when you buy them from Card Kingdom, they're going to package them professionally and ship them professionally, so those cards are going to get to you safely. I know I can always trust a Card Kingdom package to survive the wind and the rain and the UPS to get to me safe. I opened a Card Kingdom package that had been soaking wet when it was raining in February, and I opened it and all of the cards inside were completely safe because they package it real nice. So pick up some sweet cards and this sealed Commander deck if you're excited about it from cardkingdom.com/command, and you can support the show while doing so. And once those cards are in your hand, you're going to need to protect them. Go to ultrapro.com/command for the highest quality Magic accessories in the business. We're showing off some Ultra Pro product here. In this episode, we've got the Yuma Ultra Pro sleeves on the Yuma deck, but they've got a huge selection of products for Thunder Junction. If you're as excited about this set as I am, if you're into the cowboy western vibe that's going on, Ultra Pro has all of the officially licensed Magic art, and they've got it on all kinds of products. It's on playmats and sleeves and binders and deck boxes. They've been doing custom high quality binders for each set. They're like with stamped and embroidered and stuff. They're beautiful. So if you're the kind of person who really likes to store your stuff in binders, go to Ultra Pro, check them out. And while you're shopping there, you're also supporting the show incidentally. Now that is value. Go to ultrapro.com/command. We are in the midst of accepting auditions for extra turns from our patrons. If you're a patron or if you become a patron, you can submit a 2-minute audition about your pet card and why it's your favorite to come play with us in Los Angeles on an episode of Extra Turns. There's some terms, there's some conditions, there's some instructions, which are very important, and you should follow them. And you can find all of those in the link below. If you're not a patron yet, you can become one and then audition. Just go to patreon.com/command zone. And we shout out one lucky patron every single podcast episode. And this one is dedicated to Demetrius Martin.
You rock.
You do rock, Demetrius. Let's get into this episode. We're upgrading the Desert Bloom Precon, 10 cards in, 10 cards out. We usually leave the mana base as is. But before we change any of the cards in the deck, we want to get to know the deck, tell you a little bit about it. And what better way to get to know a precon than by meeting the face commander? Do you want to introduce us to Yuma?
Yeah, I like how there's not even a pretense that we're rocking Baby Yoda in the command zone. Like,
I mean, it's full art. It's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about both of them, but Yuma is gorgeous. They've been doing full art foils for the face commanders of these decks for Thunder Junction, a change I'm into, but you know.
Yeah, so yeah, I love having all my commanders as blingy as they can be, so it's sweet to just get rewarded for buying it and having it already. But yeah, Yuma's pretty sick. 8 mana commander. So I remember when I was first looking at cards for it, I was like, what about all those ones that are like care about commander cost? Like,
that's cool.
He's a chunky guy with his 8 mana.
Read what he does.
6. Sorry. Okay. So he costs 1 less to cast for each land in your graveyard. And whenever Yuma enters the battlefield or attacks, you can sack a land. And if you do, draw a card. And then the real money line here is whenever a desert card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you make a 4/2 plant warrior token with reach.
4/2, pretty big. So. Yeah, and he's 5 red, green, white, so 8 mana altogether. Naya commander. This is pretty sweet. It's our second desert-focused commander, also in Naya. The interesting thing about Yuma that I think is easy to miss is that it triggers whenever a desert goes from the battlefield to your graveyard or from your library to your graveyard.
Or
if
hand.
you mill it or if you discard it,
Yeah.
all of those are going to trigger Yuma and give you, what is this? The token? It's some kind of plant, right?
Plant warrior, 4/2.
Nice.
Kind of like a Hazazon Shaper of Sand, where it's a plant warrior also. So if you want to do some warrior
those are sand warriors. But yes, warriors also.
Yeah.
This is a really neat card because it encourages you to sacrifice your lands.
Yeah, which if you're like starting out, that's gonna sound
scary.
Terrifying.
You're like, I need those.
I work so hard. I can only play 1 a turn. What am I doing? But no, you should think of your graveyard kind of as an extension of your battlefield when piloting a deck like this. Before we get too into it, though, let's talk about the backup in Yuma's hands here.
This is the baby Kiri Talented Sprout. This is 1 red, green, white for a 0/3 plant druid. So 4 mana, 0/3. It says other plants and tree folk you control get +2/+0. So it buffs those tokens from Yuma. And then it says at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, return target plant, tree folk, or land card from your graveyard to your hand. So it gets you the land back that you're sacrificing from Yuma, and it does an anthem effect for some of the like plant token makers in the deck. There's a few things that make plants, but I think the real engine here is going to be Yuma, and you're going to need to do a little bit more building around Kiri to make it really hum.
Yeah,
it also completely ignores the desert theme. She doesn't care about deserts at all.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think if they didn't make it foil, you wouldn't know that Kiri is like the pseudo backup, as they call it, to this deck. It fits in well, but it doesn't need to be the backup of the main commander.
Yeah, I think Yuma suggests more about what is in this deck. I think you look at Kiri and think it's some sort of like planter tree folk typal deck, and that's runs a lot of fetch lands. But this is more dedicated to bringing lands from your graveyard to the battlefield is a big theme that we've seen running throughout this whole deck.
Yeah.
And that really seems to go along with what Yuma's doing. So we're going to upgrade this deck around Yuma, the face commander, the full art commander.
Yeah.
But let's get into some of the nuts and bolts. We're going to start with the best cards in the deck to give you a little bit more of an idea of like what the deck is really doing when it is online. And unsurprisingly, this first card we've already mentioned is really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only other desert commander out there prior to Yuma. So Hazazon Shaper of Sand, I'd say is probably one of the best like signpost cards of the deck. It's going to do everything that Yuma wants you to be doing, but kind of an inverse of it. Like you'll be getting the lands into play as opposed to into your graveyard, and then you get rewarded for it. So it's kind of like landfall or desert fall, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, now every time a land enters the battlefield or leaves the battlefield or goes to your graveyard, you make some kind of value. If you have these two things on board, you're just looping lands and getting wider, and have a real team of warriors is going to be a problem soon.
Just real quick, like how do you evaluate Hazazon as a pilot of a Hazazon deck in the 99 versus as the commander?
It's interesting. I was thinking about this if I was going to pivot my deck to Yuma or if I wanted to keep Hazazon in the deck, and they do sort of work differently. One is like Hazizan's really, really focused on tokens and really, really focused on playing a lot of lands. So I often don't have a lot in my graveyard because I'm sacking deserts and replaying them.
Yeah.
Where Yuma is a little bit more about filling the graveyard and like moving your lands in and out of the graveyard, which Hazizan does a little bit, but not quite as much. So where Hazizan sort of protects its lands, sacks them all, and brings them all back, feels like Yuma's going to be a little bit more graveyard focused.
Yeah.
So I think it's good in the 99 of Yuma. I'm curious to see how good Yuma's going to be in the 99 of Hazizan because it's going to be very expensive for me to cast likely.
Yeah. Well, up next, speaking of getting lands into graveyards, we have the all-star Ancient Green Warden.
I'm so excited that this is in this deck. It's a 6-mana 5/7 elemental with reach. It says you may play lands from your graveyard, so similar to Hazizan. And it says if a land entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So obviously this is really good with Hazizan because it means when deserts enter, you make 4 desert warriors instead of 2, which is pretty absurd. But it goes along with a lot of the landfall stuff that's going on in the deck. And you're really going to want to sack a bunch of lands and bring all those lands back. So landfall is a huge part of the engine of this deck.
Yeah. All right. Up last, we have a new one. Very exciting. We just wanted to talk about like one new card from the deck that will definitely pull some weight. It's Dune Chanter. So Dune Chanter gives all your lands. I'll just read it. lands you control and land cards you own that aren't on the battlefield are deserts in addition to their other types. That's the big line that you care about. Yeah.
Huge.
So now you don't just have 15 deserts. You have as many as this guy's in play are like.
Now, anytime you make a mill a land, you get a 4/2, right?
Yeah.
Because it says it's deserts not just in the battlefield, it's all your lands. Yeah,
well,
right?
Lands you control and lands you own that aren't on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Own, yes, that's right.
Okay, my bad.
No, you're totally right. I'm glad we checked.
Okay.
Yeah, so now anytime it replaces this line of text, it says whenever a land is put into your graveyard from anywhere, anytime you discard a land, anytime you mill a land, anytime you sack a land, sack a fetch land, you sack a desert, get a desert. That amplifies so much what your commander's doing, what Hazizan is doing, and it also fixes you, which is pretty nice.
And it mills cards, so why not? Just a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
It's a sweet new card, Dune Chanter.
I will say, as somebody who's had a desert deck, this says lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color, which I don't often like that kind of fixing. I think it's usually overcosted and not quite worth the card. But because Dune Chanter does so much and says that, it's such a powerhouse. Like, Hazizan has such a rough mana base because you're playing with so many like tapped 1-color deserts. And Dune Chanter does a lot of fixing. So I think that card's going to be pretty good in supercharging your commanders. Speaking of supercharging, we're going to talk about the cards that supercharge the price of this deck. We're talking about the notable reprints in the Desert Bloom deck. We're only going to talk about the cards that are worth $5 or more, of which there are 5. One of them we have already met. It's Ancient Green Warden. That's sitting at $20. The next one up is at $9. It's Oracle of Moldiah. I can't believe it's already all the way down to $9. That's great. Scoot Swarm at $6.50. Raminap Excavator at $6.50. And Avenger of Zendikar at $6.50. Some solid lands staples here. A little bit of a shame that there's only 5, but they're all really powerful, really playable, and very good in this deck. That being said, we're going to talk about the total reprint value of the deck. That is taking into account only the reprints. Those are the only ones that we know the prices for. And they are at time of recording, which is before these precons are announced. So those values are going to go down from here because that's how reprints work. When cards get reprinted, they get cheaper. So at time of recording, the total reprint value of this deck is $90.25. Not ideal. That's very low. That's the lowest precon we've seen in months. Especially considering these decks are pre-ordering for around $40 to $45. This one only takes into account 65 cards in the deck because there are a lot of cards from the main set in this deck.
Oh, okay.
So it's only taking into account like 65% of the deck, but that is a value that is much lower than what we would want out of a Precon. To put it into a little bit more perspective, if you buy it at $45, if you buy this product at $45, you will get $1.39 worth of card value for your $1 cash. And remember, that number is going to go down. So it's very likely that if you buy this right now, you're getting sort of a 1-for-1. You're spending you're spending $1 and getting $1 card value back, right, which is not really what we expect in these Precons. We want better value for them. Yeah. So I would consider that this is the lowest reprint value of this set by a long shot. They average around $130. And when you look at that in comparison to Murders at Karloff Manor, which averaged $168, and Ixalan, which averaged $150, we know that this reprint value is significantly lower than what we want to see.
But don't let that discourage you from picking up this deck and upgrading it with these sweet upgrades that we'll have coming up.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, when I buy a Precon, it's less about reprint value for me and more about, am I going to build this deck? Yeah. Do I want all these cards, honestly, with the same set symbol? Or is this just a swath of cards that I need? Mm-hmm. So buy it if you would like it. If not, pick up singles. Yeah. And do it from cardkingdom.com/command. We are going to get into this upgrade in a couple minutes, but first we're going to break down the deck more generically in terms of its mechanics. We want to talk about the nuts and bolts of it. We want to talk about the vegetables, and then we're going to talk about the more specific, the deck-specific categories of cards that make up the deck, which means it is time to break down the stats. We did it. Good stats.
You too.
All right. This deck has 13 pieces of ramp in it, 11 pieces of card draw, 8 pieces of targeted interaction, 3 board wipes, 40 lands, 17 of which are basics. Very high number of lands, but it's a lands deck. What are you going to do? And then the more deck-specific stats are this deck contains 15 deserts. It has 9 pieces of self-mill, 18 recursion cards, most of which that bring lands back to your from your graveyard to the battlefield, and 12 cards that make tokens in some variety, creature tokens specifically. All right, so those are the stats. They're really interesting, honestly. 11 pieces of draw is a little bit low for what I know about Hazizan. Like, my desert deck is card ravenous because you have so many land drop triggers that you're like putting all this stuff into play. But a lot of that card advantage that I need in Hazizan, it can be sort of attributed to self-mill in Yuma because like mill is very strong in this deck. Yeah. And 9 is low for me. Like 9 pieces of self-mill.
Oh, the self-mill. I thought you were talking about draw still. Yeah, 9 is low. Especially, because you want your commander to cost less. But I mean, I think there's like so much like backup synergies in the deck that like it's okay if it takes you a while to fill up your graveyard, because in the meantime you can do like a lot of other very cool stuff.
That's true. There are a lot of threats in this deck.
Yeah,
it has like cool. Omnath, and it has
Titania. It has like Hazazon.
It has Hazazon. Yeah, there's so like just a ton of ways to make terrifying tokens.
Avengers Zendikar.
I was gonna say, like it's just sort of haymaker after haymaker. So if you don't have your commander in play, you're like, all right, I guess we're on the Titania plan. She makes 5 3s.
But the self-mill is low. Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting because we were talking about this before with 15 deserts, and Yuma sacks lands and draws cards. But do you think 15 deserts is enough to really fuel the engine of this deck? Because it doesn't contain every desert that's ever been printed. This
yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think 15's like enough. Like, you can concede in an argument, yes, 15's enough, and both parties will leave the argument happy. But like, if there are more deserts you could have, then why not have more deserts? Like, it's not gonna hurt you in the long run. You're running green, you have ramp, like you'll be fine. You can pull more lands out of your deck if you're not like in the right colors you need. Like, just run all the deserts you can. Like, go have fun, you know?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about Yuma is density is a really big deal. Like with Hazizan, there's sometimes that you're like, if the top card is a desert, I am gonna pop off. And you're only running like 13 deserts because there's only been 13 deserts up until now, or something, 13-ish. But you're like, if it's that, then we're great. So you really just want all your lands to trigger your commander as much as possible.
Exactly.
Or you want Dune Chanter that says all your lands really do trigger your commander. The other thing I wanted to mention is the recursion is really interesting, especially with the amount of self-mill that they included. Like 18 things that return stuff from the graveyard and only 9 things that put stuff in the graveyard is a really strange balance. I would really try and shift the tables more toward self-mill so that you can, get your commander out earlier so he's cheaper, but it's just going to give you more card selection with stuff like Raminap Excavator, and it's going to give you more engine pieces for all of that recursion. And I think that is definitely something that we're going to see in the upgrade.
Would you rather have more card draw or more self-mill?
Draw.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree.
Because you just discard a hand size and then you make tokens that way.
Yeah.
You know, like
you can never have enough draw in like any deck. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you're going to have that much focus on recursion, you really, really, really need the engine to fuel that.
Yes.
And I don't think we're quite there, but we're going to tell you what cards you can add to get this deck to that point where it's going to feel like it's running like a well-oiled desert. But we're going to get to that upgrade after a few words from our sponsors.
Ooh-wee! The desert can be a harsh and unforgiving mistress. Toiling under the cruel heat of the blazing sun does a number on a fella. Even me, Yuma, proud protector. On sweltering days like this, nothing satisfies more than a cool, delicious sip of water mixed with liquid IV. A tube of liquid IV serves as an H2O multiplier, providing faster hydration than water alone. Compared to the leading sports drinks, it has thrice the electrolytes that plant folk and people crave. Liquid IV can't be beat when you've had a hard night of chasing tumbleweeds, gaming with friends, or traveling the plains. They even got a whole posse of tasty flavors, sugar-free and otherwise. My buddy Prickly Pear here's a big fan of the pear flavor. Me, I'm a lemonade man, because I always say, when life gives you lemon powder, just tear it open, pour it into your canteen, and make lemonade-flavored water. I say that literally all the time.
Turn your ordinary water into extraordinary hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code COMMAND at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code COMMAND at liquidiv.com.
Okay, things are looking dire. We really need to think this out.
All right, if I play Warrior's Instincts against the Scorned Shadow, I'll draw extra cards because it's a combat challenge.
You have to be careful of the Soul Mask trap. It punishes your card draw.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Wait, hold on. Your Fist of the Wind and my Sneak Attack are both better in combat, so maybe that's the line here.
That could work.
Yeah.
Card draw and synergies. This looks cool. Scorn Stockade. What is this?
We just picked it up. It's the new Kinfire Delve. This is the co-op strategy card game.
Yeah, it's super fun.
And you can play with 3 people?
Well, Scorned Stockade is 2 players right out of the box, but if you combine it with the previous set, you can play up to 4 players.
Just like Commander.
The rules are really easy to pick up, but the game has a lot of depth. You have to play smart to win.
Just like Magic.
And you face different challenges every single game, so you really gotta adapt on the fly.
Plus, it was only $20.
Wait, I think I got it. If I play Knockout, I can just destroy the mass directly.
Ooh, then I can boost you with a coordinated attack. But is that going to be enough?
It will be if we get a little lucky.
Okay.
Yay!
Okay. I want in next game.
All right, shuffle this up and draw 5 cards.
Order Kinfire Delve Scorned Stockade at kinfiredelve.com and use code COMMAND10 at checkout for 10% off. That's a whole lot of game for just $20. Plus, pick up the first set, Vainglory's Grotto, for the full 4-player experience. Again, that's kinfiredelve.com and use code COMMAND10 to score 10% off.
All right, my new deck list is complete. Now, let's see which cards I don't already own and buy them.
Wait, how'd you do that without going through a million boxes?
Oh, I just use Architect. They make it super easy to upload and manage your collection. Then, when you're done brewing a deck, you can sort it by collection status to see what you already have.
So this group is just cards you don't own?
Yep, I just click buy this stack, and it takes me right to Card Kingdom.
Whoa.
Architect is the best place to browse, brew, and playtest Commander decks. Just go to architect.com/command zone to get started.
That's archidekt.com/command zone.
Welcome back, everybody. We are upgrading the Desert Bloom Precon. We're talking talking about deserts. And we have come to that point in the episode where we are going to add 10 cards to the deck, 10 spectacular cards using a budget of $50. And we're going to take 10 cards out to make room for them. We've talked about what we want to accomplish with this upgrade, so it's time to get into it. This first section of cards we're talking about is card advantage. Trying to put those cards in your hand, so maybe you can't discard hand size.
I'm gonna be honest. I feel like I didn't do a good job of adding enough card advantage. So I'm sorry. I should have probably added more.
There's only 10 swaps, and you spent a lot on it. So I think we're okay.
But I'll kick it off with a spicy one to hopefully redeem myself a little. It is
so spicy. I love this include.
Yeah, so it's called Aggressive Mining, and Aggressive Mining is an enchantment for 4 mana, and it says you can't play lands, but don't
relax. It's okay. It says other things.
Yeah. It says sack a land, draw 2 cards. Activate this ability only once each turn. So you could go around the table, boom, sack a land, draw 2, boom, draw a land, sack 2, boom, draw a land, sack 2, boom, draw a land, sack 2. You're up 8 cards and 4 4/2s, like easy. That's sick.
It's pretty sweet. And I mean, aggressive mining is that kind of thing where they just cannot let you keep doing that.
Yeah.
That's so many cards.
Yeah.
And this deck is full of land recursion.
Yes.
It's full of it. So if you're sacrificing lands, you're like, I'm missing land drops, I'm sacking lands. How am I supposed to get back in this deck, in this game, especially with all my landfall stuff? But you have a ton of cards that are dedicated to taking lands from your graveyard and putting them directly on the battlefield. So you've kind of built around aggressive mining already.
Yeah, I just flipped to 3 random cards and they all said, like, put a land into play. Like, there's so many ways to get lands into play without having to worry about playing them. You're fine.
It is worth saying, you can't play lands means that you can't play them as your action for turn. So if it says, like, you have an additional land drop, you can't play that.
Yeah.
But if you have, like, a Rampant Growth, or if you have a Savin's Reclamation or an Hour of Promise, something that tutors lands to the battlefield or brings them from the graveyard to the battlefield, that's not playing a land. So it gets around the restriction of aggressive mining and is going to fill your hand and battlefield. I think this card's sweet, and you play it when you're going to win the game. Right? Like, this is like, I'm set up, I've got lands, I've got my commander, I'm going to slam this, I'm going to draw some cards in case I get blown out, but I'm setting up to close out this game.
I think this card will let you win the game no matter when you play it. So, yeah, I think just play it whenever. But yeah, I mean, don't play it on turn 4. Like, to be clear.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, play it on 4, sack all your lands. Oh, no.
No. Wait a second.
You said I would be fine.
No. Yeah, so, like, play once you have, like, an
later in the game.
online.
Yeah, exactly. Once you're set up, once things are running well, aggressive mining is going to give you the tools to close the door and also refill your hand while you're doing it.
Cool. So
also, it's only 75 cents. Pretty good. Speaking of card draw, this next one's great in this deck.
Yeah, this was another of the things I looked at immediately when I saw Yuma's ability was cards that are tagged with Ferocious, because you're making 4/2s. So, like, things like Bolt Bend would also be cool. But I'm talking about Shamanic Revelation here. So, I mean, the 4 life. Okay, so it's 5 mana and it's a sorcery, and it says draw a card for each creature you control.
Right.
But then it also has the Ferocious, where you gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. Not as impactful, but, like, it's just upside. So, like, why not? Like, most people just play Shamanic Revelation regardless.
It's also, Shamanic Revelation is dangerous when it resolves, right? Because it usually means they're drawing, like, 6 cards.
Yeah.
But if they draw 6 cards and then gain 16 life, gain 12 life, you're like, how are we supposed to win now?
Yeah.
It's such a huge life swing, especially when decks are so much more efficient than they used to be. And we're more about, like, getting to 40 than we are about getting to, like, 100.
Yeah.
That life gain really, really does impact how a commander game functions.
Aaron Hansen won that game that he probably would have lost to Josh when he played a Shamanic Revelation and went up, like, a little bit more life than everyone.
Yeah, he gained like 8 life off of that. And it's not a huge amount of life, but it is enough.
But yeah, so then the other thing I want to talk about is Shamanic Revelation. Like, the part why I think this specifically, as opposed to, like, all other card draw options, is so good is because of the 12 token makers the deck has. Like, pretty much everything that landfall fuels is going to be, like, creating creature tokens. So it's just a really good follow-up to, like, any of the like, a Titania makes you some 5/3s.
Yeah, so it also triggers Ferocious. The only one that doesn't is, like, Avenger of Zendikar, and it could eventually.
But, like, I mean, you play an Avenger and you follow it up with Shamanic, and somehow your creatures are still alive, you're drawing, like, half your deck. Like, you're fine.
It's Shamanic Revelation, I think, is a card that a lot of you look at it and you're like, it's too expensive for Commander these days. And then you cast it and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
that was sweet. I put Shamanic Revelation in my Hazizon deck because it's so hungry for card draw that like once I have a board, even if Ferocious doesn't trigger at all, which it usually doesn't, they make 1/1s.
Yeah.
I still draw like 12 cards, which is absurd.
It's so cool.
Yeah, I think this is a great include. It only takes up $1.50 of the budget, and it's going to go a long way. It's going to feel good when you cast it.
So now imagine you just cast your Shamanic Revelation, you have 15 cards in hand, and you follow up with an Invasion of Kaldheim.
When Invasion of Kaldheim enters the battlefield, exile all cards in your hand, then draw that many cards. Until the end of your next turn, you may play cards exiled this way.
Yeah.
This is a battle with 4 defense counters on it, which is the exact power
of
a
Yuma's
plant.
boys and girls.
There you
plant
go.
tokens.
Plant friends.
Yeah.
So that's the front side of Invasion of Kaldheim, which I have found to be completely correct.
Yeah.
You play this like before you make your land drops. You play your 2 lands or you play 1 land from exile, and you're up a huge amount. You've just drawn 5 fresh cards and have 1 more turn with all of your other ones.
Yeah.
The front side is wild, but the back side in this deck
Even
is
more wild.
spectacular. This is Pyre of the World Tree. It's an enchantment that says discard a land card, Pyre of the World Tree deals 2 damage to any target. It's a discard outlet for your deserts. And then it says whenever you discard a land card, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So now you're turning your lands into damage and tokens and impulse draw.
Yeah.
It's a huge swing and a ton of value for just 1 land.
Yeah, even if you don't have Yuma in play, like you won't feel bad discarding a land to shock a creature and see 2 cards deeper. Yeah. It's amazing. So I'm super stoked to see that out there and just see it putting in the work it deserves to put in. Yeah.
I can't believe this card is only 50 cents still. Invasion of Kaldheim is so powerful.
Yeah.
People are like, battles are underpowered. I'm like, have you played against this card? It is serious. This next one is an all-star in Hazizon, and I'm very excited to see it on this list.
This is like the most Jimmy card ever right here. So it's 2 red and X cost, and you sack any number of lands, and for each land sacrificed this way, you draw a card, and you may play X additional lands this turn, and they enter the battlefield tapped this turn. So yeah, you're going to be, once again, just sacking some lands, getting some 4/2s, and on the other side, you're just going to have a fresh new set of cards, and hopefully some more lands, but like even if you don't, like you'll have gas in your hand. Like there's only upside to it. It's pretty sweet.
Nahiri's Lithoforming is excellent with stuff like Raminap Excavator or Hazizon, things that let you play lands from your graveyard because it gives you additional land drops. So with Nahiri's Lithoforming, you can sack all your lands.
Yeah.
So let's say I sack 5 lands.
Yeah.
And then you get 5 additional land drops. You just replay all the lands that you've sacked from your graveyard and you have a whole fresh new hand.
That's sweet.
It's a huge swing and it draws so many cards. It's going to do a pretty good impression of Scapeshift, but it draws you more than just lands.
Yeah. How little would you pay for X to still be happy? 1? 2?
It depends if I have Yuma on board. Like if I'm making additional value from sacrificing the land or by replaying a land, then probably 1 or 2 is fine. If I'm just doing it to dig, then I really am probably going to sack as many as I can.
Plus, if you sack deserts, they'll make Yuma cost less. So
exactly, like you put them in your graveyard, you replay all the ones from your hand and whatever from your graveyard if you need it.
So there's some hot tech from Rachel. If Yuma's in play, 1 or 2, you're fine.
Yeah,
or more. But if Yuma's not in play, go all the way. Just sack them all.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a deck to be cautious about. You have to plan to have the pieces you need. Like, you can't just sack a land and hope that 2 4/2s is going to close out the game for you. If you're in a situation where you're like, all right, this is the turn I win, otherwise we're going to lose to that, then you sack all your lands. Yeah. Try it.
Do it.
Go nuts. Commander players are very precious about our lands. We were like, we want to make sure we have everything so we can keep playing the game. Well, if you're winning the game, you don't need those. You need 4/2s. Sack your lands. Go nuts.
Yeah, and if you want a card to really make you devaluate the importance of your lands. Well, Life of the Loam is perfect because it's going to make your land just your hand bursting with lands. Like all you're going to have in your hand is lands after you play this.
Life from the Loam, for those who haven't had the pleasure of playing or playing against it, is a sorcery for 1 and a green. It says return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard to your hand. But the neat part is it has dredge 3, which means anytime that you would draw a card, you can instead mill 3 cards and draw Life from the Loam from your graveyard.
Busted.
And in this deck, it is wild.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be milling cards. If you mill deserts, then you get tokens, and then you can return those from your graveyard to your hand. It's just an engine in a box, especially for land decks.
Not to mention, just dredging lands into your graveyard is just going to fuel all your other like mini Yumas, like the Turn Timber Sower and the Sand Scout.
Yeah. That's a new one that cares about lands going to your graveyard from anywhere.
So the dredge is just going to be like just this all-star mechanic, and then on the flip side of it, you're just getting lands in your hand. It's just a land jamboree out there. It's
a land jamboree. Plus, Life from the Loam has been reprinted a couple of times recently, so it's pretty low right now. It's only $6.50. We've seen it as high as $20, $25. So if you don't have one and you're into lands, get yourself a Life from the Loam. Treat yourself.
I saw the price of the borderless foil one. I think is the borderless one from Ravnica Remastered. I think it's like the same price as a regular. So that's treat yourself. Yeah.
Go shopping. Get some lands into your hand and into your graveyard and into your hand and into your graveyard. This next one is one of my favorite cards that has been printed recently, and not just because it's so good in Sidisi.
Because it's also good in this.
It's also good in this. In my desert deck. It's Aftermath Analyst. It's 1 and a green for an elf detective. When he enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards, and then it has an activated ability that says 3 and a green. Sacrifice it. Return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. See, we told you you'd get some lands back.
Yeah.
So this whole section is about sort of putting more stuff into your graveyard, really upping that self-mill, and then giving yourself a little bit of recursion too, because they often go hand in hand. So Aftermath Analyst is going to be excellent early. It's going to mill some cards, make your commander cost cheaper, and then after you've sacked a whole bunch of lands because you're bold and brave, you can bring them all back to the battlefield with Aftermath Analyst.
Be empowered to sack those lands.
Sack them. You don't need them.
No.
Aftermath Analyst is only 75 cents and is going to just do everything this deck wants.
Yeah, another card from Murders at...
This is great in this deck. This is the first...
Markov Manor.
It's Karlov.
No, Murders at Karlov Manor is...
You were close.
Undergrowth, I was so confident. Undergrowth Recon, it's $5 and it's an enchantment for 3 mana. So you're going to get this out super early and then just like not worry about a thing for the rest of the game, because it says at the beginning of your upkeep, you can return a land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Boom. Value. That's like
hit
every
your
turn.
Land up every turn.
Yeah, like there's no doubt you'll be just every turn getting a land back into play off this that you'll be sacking, because that's what you got to do.
That's a combo with aggressive mining. Now it just doesn't matter. You sack the land, you get it back with Undergrowth Recon, where you're not down any lands.
Wow. That's sweet. So yeah, Undergrowth Recon, it does one thing and it does it right, and it does it for 3 mana and $5. And it's sick.
This card's really cool in the deck. It's the first Undergrowth Recon deck that I'm like, yeah, it is a Recon deck. Especially because your commander, when it ETBs or attacks, you sack that land. So it means that you're not down lands when you're doing that. This is a perfect deck for this card as well. Blossoming Tortoise. It's 2 green for a 3/3 turtle. When he enters the battlefield or attacks, mill 3 cards. Then return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Again, great way to get lands from your graveyard back on the battlefield and fuel that self-mill. It also says activated abilities of lands you control cost 1 less to activate. And land creatures you control get +1/+1. That's going to be less relevant. But the activated abilities of lands you control is actually incredibly relevant with deserts, because a lot of them have activated abilities, and some of them are very, very relevant.
Yeah, like dealing damage to creatures, right?
There's one that goes face, but there's one that is an anthem, I believe. It's Sheffet Dunes.
Nice.
Don't quote me. Even the white one, yes. Yeah. Don't quote me, even though everybody's quoting me. Oh, no!
Stop quoting her. winner.
Don't quote me on my podcast. Sacrifice a desert. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. So it makes those abilities cost less.
One less.
It makes those like fixing deserts that are like one and tap filter land deserts.
It's now just a filter.
And now it's just a 3-color land.
Yeah.
So Blossoming Tortoise keeps being relevant sort of all the way down. It's gonna be very good.
I love these engine cards, like the Invasion of Kaldheim's kind of like that too. Like it just has like 4 effects on it, and all of them just sing so well with the commander. So it's really cool to see stuff like that. And
it makes sense.
Excited.
Blossoming Tortoise is $7, but it's going to be really, really worth it because every single line of text, well,
it's
3 of the
$2.
4 lines of text. It has a lot of lines of text. Yeah, that's true.
Each line's worth $2. Anyway, one more self-mill recursion-y type card
this card's great.
is Realms Uncharted. So this one's Rise of Eldrazi. Sweet card. 3 mana tutor that gets lands in. I'll just read it. Sorry. Search your library for 4 land cards with different names and reveal them. An opponent chooses 2 of those cards and put the chosen cards into your graveyard and the rest into your hand. Shuffle your library. So boom, 2 in your hand, 2 in your graveyard. Yuma's going to be so happy about instant speed. Oh my gosh! Why is this card only $6?
It's wild. Realms Uncharted is
silly.
So busted in Azizan. Yeah. It's more busted in Yuma.
Yeah.
Because you put 2 deserts into the graveyard. Yuma's like, 2 deserts? I'll make 2 4/2s.
Nom.
And you search for 4 deserts. And then you get 2 into your hand. At instant speed, you play those. Your engine is fully set up. There's only 15 deserts in this deck. So having a little bit of a tutor that finds you 4 of them is so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple of tutors for deserts, I guess.
I almost put Crop Rod into the upgrade because,
Crop Rotation's very, very powerful as a card.
Yeah.
I think Realms Uncharted does more for you in this deck than Crop Rod does.
Right, because it gets you 4 instead of 1. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Realms Uncharted is great in this deck, and so is Crop Rotation if you've got some extra room in your budget, which you're gonna because this last card is only worth 25 cents.
You convinced me on this one. You're like, it's so good in a land sacky deck.
Yeah, I mean, this card is just so important, and when it comes down across from you, and you're playing any sort of aggressive strategy, you're like, oh, I don't win now. It's Zurin Orb. It's a 0-mana artifact that says sacrifice a land, you gain 2 life. Again, this deck is about being bold, being brave, sacrificing a bunch of lands, using those recursive effects to bring them back to the battlefield, because that's a ton of life, and that's a ton of 4/2s at instant speed on your opponent's end step. Like, can you imagine they play Zurin Orb, pass, even if they're tapped out, and they have Yuma in play? Now, even like if Zurin Orb resolves, even a removal spell isn't going to stop them from just making a board full of 4/2s.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Like, it does put your opponent in bind because, like, sure, you could be sneaky and like try to hide it or whatever, or just like not make it like you can obviously be like, oh, I play Zurin Orb, like, and that's fine, and like everyone knows you have it, but they'll probably forget because it's like a 0-mana artifact. But like maybe they don't, maybe they see it and they're like, okay, I'll play around it. Sure, they go to like Beast Within Yuma or Beast Within, or I don't know, Path to Exile, or like Generous Gift your Zurin Orb. In response, boom, you now have agency. So they need like 2 things to deal with, like your plan. Like they need to have an answer for Zurin Orb or Yuma, and then have a backup plan for your new army of 4/2s.
It's also busted with Titania. It's really powerful with Omnath. Just free sack outlets in a deck like this, especially free land sack outlets, are not easy to come by. Because it's just people don't want to sack their lands that much. So the fact that like it just doesn't get any freer than a 0-mana artifact. But the thing about Zurin Orb that I especially like in this deck is you're making 4/2s. So you're very difficult to attack.
Yeah.
Like if somebody attacks you with any creature and you can just instant speed, sack a land, make a 4/2 and block.
Yeah.
That makes you a very difficult target to get chip damage on, to attack with any amount of creatures that you're hoping to survive combat. Or on end step, they have to be cautious because you could just sack 5 lands and have 20 power on board and swing back with 20 power. Zurin Orb just creates all of these possibilities in your opponent's head that you're like, I need to play around so much now, and they paid no mana for that.
You can't play around the future, and Zurin Orb is the future.
Ponder the orb.
Ponder it.
Zurin Orb.
So yeah, there you have it. Those are our 10 sweet upgrades to make this deck destroy everybody around you and win every game, but also have fun, because that's the most important part. So yeah.
And we only spent $28.75 of this budget, so there's room to foil things out. Get fancy versions of all of these. Get that old border Zurin Orb. You deserve it.
Yeah,
or get a crop rotation if you want.
Yeah, Sylvan Safekeeper. Also, there's just sky's the limit. You have so much fun with this deck and learning what you need to make it better beyond. No, you can't make it better than 10 upgrades I did. Sorry. But you'll have fun trying to figure out what you could do that would be better.
It's the cool thing about deserts is I have wanted a lands deck for a long time, but they always feel like Simic value piles, and they always kind of feel and look the same to me. So I never got excited to like build that kind of deck. But I always wanted a lands deck because I had a ton of the pieces for it. I used to have a Windgrace deck. I was like, this is what I want to do, but I don't want it to feel like crazy busted.
Yeah.
And when the Hazizon came out, I was like, oh, this is super niche. Now this is a very specific plan. It's about looping deserts. It's about like tokens. It's about a more narrow space in the lands archetype that means that you can build sort of to the max but still feel like you have a little bit of a ceiling, which is nice. I like a little bit of restriction when I'm building. It makes me feel more creative. It makes me feel like I can run lower power cards. So I would encourage you to try deserts. I think it's really fun.
Yeah, one other really exciting thing, sorry, before we move on
please.
is, okay, cool. I think it's cool that a desert deck, like as you're saying, the niche aspect of it means you won't have to like upgrade the mana base like an insane amount, because usually like you can accidentally like sink a bunch of money into like fetch lands in a landfall deck. But I mean, yeah, sure, lands like sacking like fetch lands are always good, but if you're trying to get deserts, you're like Verdant Catacombs or whatever won't get you a desert. So there's no point in like going all out on a crazy budget, because the deserts are all like under $1 each pretty much. Yeah. So your land base is going to be really inexpensive, which is if you're going to upgrade further, which I think is really exciting about the promise this deck has. Yeah.
It's sweet.
Yeah.
We've added 10 sweet cards. It means we have to take 10 less sweet cards out of the deck.
Yeah.
And this one was interesting. There's definitely some side quests going on in the Precon, but I think we had some pretty easy cuts to really streamline the strategy of this deck and make sure it's working as well as possible. Starting with Josh Lee Kwai's favorite card that he puts in everything.
Yeah.
Chromatic Lantern.
Yeah. It's just not. It's
you don't put 3 mana rocks in your land stack. Put, Rampant Growth.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next up, Skullwinder. You don't need. It's a weird recursion effect. You're gifting your opponents things too, and all we really need to get back is our lands. You don't need to do this to get back your lands. There's other stuff to get back. So
I agree.
That's cut number 2.
The next one is actually one of my favorite cards to play in white. It's Marshall's Anthem. This is an Anthem effect, so it'll buff your plants, but it will also, if you multi-kick it, will reanimate some creatures for you. We're doing a lot of self-mill, but we're not really about getting the lands back from the graveyard. It's nice. It buffs some of your tokens and it reanimates a thing, but it's a very expensive way to do that, and we'd rather just sort of get more lands back and continue the engine.
If you have a 4/2, you don't need it to be a 5/3.
Yeah.
That's my thinking, essentially. And Angel of Indemnity, I think that was like it's 7 mana, something crazy like that.
This is the new magic card, so I will read it. It's Angel of Indemnity is 5 and a white for a 5/5 Angel Warrior with flying and lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, return target permanent card with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it has Encore 8, 6 white for Encore. I think this card is awesome, but I would run it more in a mono white deck that's trying to win through combat, that's doing angel things, that has the synergy to really hold it up. I think it can do huge swings, and we're actually going to talk about it in the 99 episode.
Good.
So we'll evaluate it more there. But I agree that there are way cheaper ways to get lands into play when you're in green than paying 8 mana for an
Exactly. Yeah. And... Yeah. You said all you just say. Exactly. I'm excited to hear you talk about its shining qualities in a different episode. Next up is this flippy card, Heaven and Earth. It's got Aftermath, which means you can cast it from your graveyard and then exile it. So yeah, I mean, sure, you're going to be milling stuff, but I don't know. I thought it was a really interesting choice of removal inclusion, and I don't think needs to be in the deck. 'Cause it's going to wipe your really like token-based deck, and it's just going to wipe all your tokens.
It's damage-based, it's like an X wipe, right? For it's damage-based?
Yeah, deal X damage to each creature with flying, and then the aftermath deal each damage to each creature without flying. So yeah, if you're going wide, you don't want to be running wipes that won't do the things.
Only kill the little things.
Yeah. So
yeah, you have 4 2s. It's going to be really hard not to kill him with.
Get out of here, heaven and earth. Descend upon this. Oh yeah, you go.
No, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Descend upon the sinful is another wipe that. Sorry, I'm just cutting all your wipes. I don't know. Wipes slow down a game, and you don't want to slow down the game. You want to rip and roar and sack your lands. So it's an overcosted board wipe. It's a 6 mana, and it's exile all creatures. And you make a 4/4 token if there are. You get 1 4/4.
You get 1, yeah. You get 1 angel.
So bad.
If you have threshold, right?
Yeah, cut this card. Yeah. Delirium.
Yeah, delirium. Yeah. Excuse me.
Get out of here.
What I also don't like about this is it doesn't work with a lot of your graveyard recursion. You have all this recursion. You don't want to wipe that exiles all your creatures. Like this is an Omnath deck too. You want your stuff to die.
Yeah.
So it has a lot of weird cross synergies. It makes a big token, so that's good. But you can find another wipe for
You'll
this.
make a 4/2 plant just like with much less effort than a 6 mana wipe. That'll probably set you back. And
you keep cutting my angels, Arthur.
I know you love this
Angel of the Ruins.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's a weird deck for this. Angel of the Ruins is a 5/7 angel with planes cycling. So you cycle it, go find a planes. There's not that many planes in the deck. There's not that many basics. So that's a little bizarre. But mostly I like Angel of the Ruins in
a flicker deck or
in like
deck.
Flicker decks or reanimator decks or artifact decks, some ways to take advantage of the fact that it's in your graveyard, it's an artifact, and it has a great ETB, and we're just not doing that here. So it's not great.
I'm offended that Scare Tiller's in here. I'm sorry. It's just
they
what
keep
the heck,
trying
man.
to put Scare Tiller in precons, and I keep wanting Scare Tiller to do something, and yet it do not.
I'm gonna put over there. Sorry. Genesis Hydra's next. You can tell us why this one's going to get cut.
I was like, well, maybe this card's good. And then I read it. When you cast this spell, reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put a non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield, then shuffle the rest into your library. Genesis Hydra enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it. I was like, well, if this puts, the top 6 cards of your library into play, then maybe it's good. Or maybe if you pick one and the rest go to your graveyard, then that's good. But it doesn't do either of those things. It gets 1 permanent from your library and it puts the rest back into your library, which it just isn't what we're doing.
Yeah, so you're like, okay, well, maybe I'll pay like 1 for X and get a land, and then boom, I got my land off it, which is what I wanted.
You just paid 3 mana for a 1/1 Hydra?
Yeah. So, yeah.
I don't know. This also isn't a big mana deck. Where like a lot of lands decks are about making a ton of mana. This is much tighter than that. You're going to be doing a lot of ramping, but it's more about lands like sort of coming in and going out and coming in and going out. It's like the land recycling system rather than like a land accrual system. So it's not like you're going to have 30 mana to dump into this.
Yeah.
And even if you do, then you only get 1 card of the top 30.
You have 30 mana and you're dumping in this, like something's gone wrong.
That's a bummer.
I fixed that for you and you don't have to do it now.
Yeah,
you're cutting it. Next up and last, I don't know, I was having trouble like honestly with the last cut because like there's so many just awesome cards in this deck, but I just went with Swiftfoot Boots. I don't know. I mean, maybe you could find a better one, but that's just the 10th one I picked.
I actually don't hate this cut, and let me tell you why. Let me tell you why.
Yes.
This deck has many points of threat, right? Where it has, like we've talked about, it has big Omnath, like big angry Omnath. It has Titania. It has your commander. It has Hazizan. It has graveyard recursion. It has multiple ways to play lands from the graveyard. It has multiple
Green Warden.
Ancient Green Warden. Yeah. You have, this deck is about pressure, not protecting one piece of your engine. It's about a steady stream of threats. I'm going to sack my lands. I'm going to bring it back. It's resilience. Yeah. So one removal spell, like this says that you need your commander to survive. And I don't think this deck does.
Yeah.
I think it just moves on to plan B and plan C and plan D. And Swiftfoot Boots says, no, we're just going to double down on plan A.
Thank you, Rachel. You put like my idea into a really coherent thought. So that's exactly what I was thinking. You voiced it so well. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. It's I actually don't run Swiftfoot boots very much anymore unless I have a really important unless I have a really important commander to make the deck go.
Okay.
Sweet. All right, that's 10 cards in. That's 10 cards out. Speaking of lands, 10 lands in, 10 lands out, 10 lands in again. Is how the deck works.
Yeah.
But
Good transition.
That's the segue into this next section. We're just going to talk about how the deck plays for a second because
you're getting shuffled up and ready to play.
Oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm excited. I want to make changes to Azizan. I haven't done that.
Nice.
So, we're going to talk about how the deck plays now that these changes have been made and talk about, like, if you pick this up, if you make the changes, what would you recommend people do when they're playing it to play successfully?
Yeah, so the deck's like, I probably should have checked beforehand, but there's an insane amount of green in the deck, I believe. And even I think the best cards involve green pips. So I think you want to keep let's start with like, you want to keep a hand with like, that will fuel green going forward. So at least one land that makes green, because once again, deserts, you got to make sure that
the mana base is dodgy. Yeah,
you got to make sure you got a hand with green in it. You got to make sure you have ramp in there, probably green ramp. And then and then I think what you're doing until like turn 4 or so is you're playing like one of your like signpost cards, like something that'll like maybe like agitate the table a little bit and make them think, ooh, he's that you're getting off to like a little bit of a start. And that's gonna let you like test I like to think of I always bring this up, but I learned like a long time ago that penguins in the North Pole, like they'll if they're gonna like see if it's safe to go jump, like as a colony, like jump in and get fish, they'll all crowd around the edge of the iceberg until like one of the penguins inevitably gets pushed into the water
and just see what happens.
If there's like a leopard seal in there, then they know it's not safe.
Don't go in there.
Yeah, so you're at the edge of Poor Phil. So yeah, you're kind of emulating that. You're gonna like put out your penguin into the water and see if it's safe for Yuma and the rest of your deck to go swim. If turn 5 your threat is single target removed, then I think that means you're like kind of in the clear.
Yeah.
Because someone's they're not probably going to go double, like 2 turns in a row, remove a threat. If they wipe, I also think you're in the clear. If there's someone that casts a board wipe. If neither of those happen, you probably want to wait a turn or 2 before you play Yuma or continue to progress your game plan. So that's kind of how I see like your setup and like the start of the game going. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a really interesting deck to pilot because it is kind of going to be like just see what happens because you're setting up for one big turn where you resolve a threat and a land sack outlet or a threat and, you know, a whole bunch of land drops. And then you're going to untap with a ton of tokens is the idea. So you're going to go from not the threat really to, oh no, are we dead?
Oh yeah.
I think is going to be a very thin pivot point in this deck. What you really don't want to do is just sort of like sack 1 land, sack 2 lands, attack for like 4... Like it feels like you want to like hit the gas and attack a bunch of lands and then go for it.
Yeah, probably don't piecemeal too hard. Like you want to set up for sure, but like don't like drip feed your win with this deck. It's going to be like you're setting up with the goal in mind of your end game. Like you've got the script ready and you know what your climactic like moment is for your script, and you're going to have it sandbagged in your hand and you're going to be ready. And it's probably going to involve Yuma too to a degree.
Yeah.
And that'll probably in the later turns I think involve like leapfrogging between casting threats and sandbagging. So don't elf ball it. Don't just like
dump your whole
your whole hand.
You definitely don't want, we talked about these same threats over and over again, but you definitely don't want like Yuma on the battlefield while you also have Titania or while you also have Omnath or Avenger, because that's just, you're overcommitted to the board at that point where it's like, if they answer that, great. There's one board wipe out of their hand, then you resolve a second threat. I don't even think this deck really wants board protection because it just has so much graveyard recursion that you're like,
you're fine.
If you blow up the board, I'll rebuild.
Yeah, I'll blow up my own board better with all my land sack outlets anyway.
Yeah, it's and you know, be bold. It's the kind of deck that's really you're gonna have to put yourself in precarious positions to win the game with this deck. Sometimes you're gonna have to slam Zern Orb and sack all your lands and hope it works out.
You have to do
and if it doesn't, Cool, you tried.
Yeah.
Like they.
It'll give you a good memory to sack Aliens or Norb for sure. So
It's,
motto of this
yeah.
deck: be bold.
Be bold.
Yeah, be
Go
brave.
see Dune 2.
Yeah, what is it? Dune Chandler is the name of the.
Yeah, I know. Dune. Yeah, that's.
Chanter, Dune Chanter.
They recently did Dune as one of the end steps, and I was like, well, I should have saved it for the desert deck.
Oh, I did just watch it over the weekend, but yeah,
Really good.
Uh,
To the listeners,
Yeah.
what do you guys think of this Precon? What do you guys think of Dune 2? Any cards that we missed that you were like, of course, you have to add this to this deck? Any cards we suggested to take out or even add that you disagree with? You're like, I haven't had good luck with that card, or I have a Aziz on deck, and let me tell you what I've learned from it.
if
I'll
you
tell
cut
you,
aggressive mining, we're gonna have problems though.
Yeah, you got to play aggressive mining. Now I got to put aggressive mining in my deck. I don't even think I have it. I definitely have a copy.
Well, you can go pick one up.
At cardkingdom.com/command while supporting the show. Card Kingdom has a huge selection of Magic singles and sealed products you could go pick up this or any of the precons from Thunder Junction while supporting the content that you love for no extra cost. We have an Architect link that you can go to the show notes and you can click on that, and there will be a whole section that'll lay out exactly the upgrade. You can add that straight to your cart in Card Kingdom and buy this whole upgrade and get the Precon all in one package shipped to your door ready for game night. Make sure you get some sleeves though too, which we'll talk about in a second. But first, cardkingdom.com/command. When you need those sleeves, it's going to have to be a second card. Go to ultrapro.com/command. UltraPro has a huge selection of high quality Magic accessories, everything from sleeves to dice to deck boxes, playmats, plushies. I buy all sorts of wild stuff from UltraPro. Some of my favorite products there are they have keyword dice, which you can use to like give something a flying counter or something like that. Those are back in stock, but they are low stock, so get them now if you want them. They also have card sorters. I'm very particular about how my collection is sorted and stored, so when I'm deck building, I can build very quickly and I know where all my cards are, and the card sorters are a huge part of that process, making sure I know where all my cards are in the sorting process, and they go exactly where they're going to go in my actual collection. So I use UltraPro to protect and organize my collection. You should use it to go to ultrapro.com/command. And finally, remember that we are taking auditions to play on extra turns here in Los Angeles. If you're a patron or if you want to become a patron to audition, you can. Submit a video. There's a link below that's going to have all of the terms and conditions. You can come hang out with everybody here at the Command Zone. You can meet Arthur. You can meet me and play a sweet game of Commander on the YouTube channel that you're watching right now. How cool.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a little bit of time, so I think we're going to do an end step, and I haven't done one in a while, so I appreciate you letting me do this.
Yeah, I told her my life is very unexciting, so you go off.
Yeah, you. So recently I was listening to Pie Break, which is a really great Magic podcast, but they did an episode with Jim LePage where he wanted to talk about BattleBots.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh my God, they're making new BattleBots?
Whoa.
That's wild. So I went online and I was like, where can I watch BattleBots? And you can watch it on Max. And there's just like 5 seasons, 6 seasons of modern day BattleBots where they build 250-pound robots in Los Angeles and then in Las Vegas, and they fight them, and there's flamethrowers and there's hammers and saws and spinners, and you meet all of the teams that design these robots, and you get to see them go from season to season, and they make changes to their robots and like try and fight better, and they give away a giant nut and a giant bolt, and it's just the most ridiculous thing.
Awesome. Wow.
It's like honestly my new Great British Bake Off. It's so wholesome. They all work together behind the scenes. If somebody's robot breaks, they'll be like, actually, this piece that I'm using is a piece from this other robot that broke and is out of the tournament at this point. So they like collaborate to get the robots back in shape so they can go back into the ring. So it's just all very fun, and it's just a bunch of engineers fighting big hunks of metal, and you should go watch BattleBots because
Do you see them?
Wildly fun.
Do you see them control it like with their little controllers?
Yes, and they all have different like. There's some that have like these ones with the sticks and stuff, and then there's some that have like the RC one with the trigger.
Nice.
And usually bots will have multiple controllers. So there'll be one driver that controls like wheels direction and one driver that controls weapons.
They need so much trust to like.
Absolutely.
Wow.
These teams like work together, and then there's some teams that are like one man bands, and they're like, I do everything, and that's what it is.
Are there any like on YouTube, like not the full episode, but like any fights in particular where like you can give away without spoiler? Like you should go watch so and so versus so and so. Like,
so there's really cool robots to like. I really love Witch Doctor. Witch Doctor is like a real mid-range bot. It's got like pretty good defense, but a good aggressive spinner, vertical spinner. A really fun one to watch if you want to watch just like crazy high flying fights or any of the flippers. There's a new one. Well, we're like still watching the new seasons, but there's one called Blip that's really fun. He's a little triangle and he has a flipper and he just launches 250-pound robots into the air. There's one called Huge that has giant wheels and a spinner in the middle, and he's like this big sort of Gumby awkward robot that fights these like little compact things, and he's like, I'm just big and trying to win. But the best robot of all time, and if anybody has seen BattleBots, they'll know that this is true, is Rusty. And Rusty is a pile of scraps that was made on a farm by one guy who was really excited about BattleBots, and he shows up and he just gets wrecked.
No.
But he's so cute and his team is so sweet, and they just keep coming back, and we love Rusty so much.
That's adorable. That's awesome.
He's got eyes. Any robot with eyes is fun to fight.
I'm Team Rusty. That's
Team
awesome.
Rusty. I'm sure Rusty's on the screen, and my editors are screaming at me because now they have to look up
so much
specific robot images. Thanks, guys.
BattleBots. Unite.
Fight night.
Oh.
You should go see it.
Okay.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
Before we go, we're going to say thank you to our amazing team here at the Command Zone. Thank you to Damon Lentz, Eric Lem, Megan Yip, Gaurav Galati, Jordan Pridgeon, Jamie Block, Manson Lung, Josh Murphy, Jake Boss, Sam Waldo, Evan Limburger, Katie Cole, Mitch Trafford, Josh Lee Quiet, Jimmy Wong, and, of course, to Arthur Meadowcroft for taking time to upgrade this here Desert Bloom Precon. Some very spicy includes, very fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing it. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. We got 2 more precons, I think, to upgrade. So if we haven't covered the one that you're excited about, don't worry. We're covering it.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @JoshLeeQuai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.